Hey everyone, this is Nathan Williams with BlackRain79.com, and I am back here with another hand history review for you guys. Sorry about the little break there. I needed a couple weeks off. Talking about too much poker here. But I got way too many hands that you guys have sent me. So I'm gonna be recording a lot of videos and putting them out soon and get back on this YouTube thing. So let's get back into the action here. This is hand that was sent to me by Toby from the UK. He's got pocket twos in the big blind. He's playing, I believe this is played on Poker Stars. As you can see, it's 2 cent, 5 cent, and we are five-handed. 6 max table, of course, one seat missing. So Villain 3 raises it up 3 times the blind from the big blind. Now, the information that Toby gave me on this guy is that this is over 68 hands. This guy is a 37-31. That is the VPIP and the PFR. Aggression factor is 1. And I have some other stats, but I'll get into those later. So 37-31, what does that mean? Well, for 6 max, that basically translates to loose aggressive for me. Not quite into fish or recreational player territory, but definitely quite loose and aggressive. The 1 aggression factor is very low, but again, it's only 68 hands. I tend to not look at that stat too much until I get at least a sample size of 100 hands. By the way, if any of you guys are watching this and just think I'm completely speaking Greek right now and have no clue what I'm talking about, there's a link in the description below this video. It's where you can find out all about HUD stats. That's what I'm talking about here. How to get them on your screen when you're playing online poker and all that kind of stuff. So, link in the description for that stuff. But basically, what we're dealing with here is a loose aggressive player. I don't really want to make too many conclusions on the aggression yet, but usually aggression pre-flop translates into aggression post-flop. Not always, but usually. So let's get back to the action here, see what Toby does. So he decides to flat. There's nothing wrong with flatting here. I just want to get that out of the way. There's nothing wrong with it. But I actually do prefer to 3-bet in this situation. The reason why I prefer to 3-bet is because it just gives us more ways to win the pot. It means we can make him fold pre-flop, of course. And, of course, on the flop as well, it's going to give us the betting lead. Assuming he just calls pre-flop, it's going to give us the betting lead on the flop, which allows us to make a C-bet and potentially just take it down unimproved. Because we need to always remember that with a hand like pocket twos, we're only going to hit a set. I think it's 1 out of 8.5 times. Not very often, whatever that is with percentage-wise. It's not very good, obviously. And with a hand like pocket twos, all those times we miss, you're basically, the flop is terrible, right? It's all over cards, right? Oh, and we get to have to act first on every single post-flop street. So it kind of sucks almost all the time we call pre-flop here, because what are we just going to do a lot of the time is check and fold, right? So I prefer to 3-bet here most of the time. Now, I don't want to say that I 3-bet all the time. That's why I think that the flat is okay here, and I think you should mix a flat into your play here, but I would say something like 2/3 of the time that I would be 3-betting here, and I would actually maybe bump that up a little bit versus what I believe is a loose and aggressive player, just because I believe that I'm that far ahead of his range. Now, where am I getting these numbers from? Well, I'm kind of pulling them out of my ass. I'm not going to lie. I don't have any science behind this. I'm not a math nerd, guys. That's not how I approach this game. As I talk about in Modern Small Stakes, there's about 100 hand histories in that book. My second book, Modern Small Stakes, and I talk about that a lot in that book. I think it confused some people, because what I'm really talking about is balancing your range, and that you should never be doing something 100% of the time in poker, right? You should never be always flatting here. You should never be always 3-betting. You shouldn't really ever be folding here. But that's what I'm talking about when I talk about what I'm saying. I'm going to be 3-betting 2/3 of the time here, flatting 1 out of 3 times, something like that, player dependent. And a lot of that's how I approach the game is ratios of decisions. And really, once you get, higher up in the stakes, that's how you need to start thinking about the game more and more often. You can't be, you should just check here. You should just bet here. No, you should be checking this amount of the time, betting this amount of the time, to keep people constantly guessing about what you're doing with certain hands. Like if you're just always flatting with pocket deuces here, oh my god, like if a thinking player starts to realize that, and remember, a lot of times you guys, when you're playing online, you're playing against these guys every single day. If any of these guys are studying your play, like I recommend that you study other people's play in a program like Poker Tracker. Some smart players could pick up on that, and I was like, oh, when he flats preflop, he always has this hand, that hand, or this hand, and if the flop comes this, I know he didn't hit and he's going to check fold every single time, so I can just bet 100% of the time and always take it down. So that's what I'm talking about here, is you need to be constantly mixing up your plays. So that was kind of a little tangent there. I don't really want to get too much deeper into that. The only thing that I wanted to really to point out here is that I personally would be 3-betting the majority of the time here, but I also would have a flatting range here as well. Perhaps Toby has the exact same thinking here, and he's just on his flatting range right now, and that's totally fine as well. So anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get to the flop. So obviously it's one of those rare occasions where, we're happy, obviously. Flop the bottom set. Always going to be bottom set with pocket twos. Pretty good board overall. There's not too much to complain about. So what do we do here? So, as I've talked about a million times, especially in my first book, Crush the Micro Stakes, on my blog, and even in videos here on YouTube a million times, what do we do with these smallest stakes when you got a huge hand? Fast play, of course. Slow playing is the death to your win rate at these stakes. You always, because these players, all they love to do is just call, call, call. What do you do when you got the nuts against somebody who loves to call, call, call? You bet, bet, bet. However, we are out of position in this hand, and what is the best way to get money into the pot when you are out of position in a hand? To get the most money in the pot, that would be check raise. So I agree with Toby's decision in this spot to check, obviously looking to go for the check raise. Now, I need to point out here, it is very important that you don't do this against extremely passive players, because what are passive players going to do? They're going to check behind, and that's a disaster. That means we get no money in the pot, which really sucks. We got our bottom set, obviously. But with this player, we've already identified him as a loose, aggressive player. The one aggression factor is low, but again, small sample size. So I don't mind Toby's decision here, and he does get the bet out of villain 3, which allows Toby to go for the old check raise, pops it up to 51 cents. I think that's a pretty good sizing right there. So yeah, totally on board with decision making here. So that's great. We get the maximum amount of money in the pot on the flop. So A+ there in for Toby's play there. Everything's perfect. So come to the turn here, catch the king. It obviously completes the queen 10 draw, but other than that, that's just one hand. I would assume that's in his range. He's a 37% VPIP. I'm sure he's playing that hand. You gotta always remember it's just one hand. The king is kind of a good card in some ways because it completes a lot of 2-pair hands that you could potentially have, such as king jack, king 9, possibly even king deuce. So yeah, overall, I just think it's really doesn't change things too much for us here. So the only question is, do we go for a double check raise or lead out? Toby decides to lead out, which I think honestly is just kind of the safer play. I really only like to go for a double check raise against somebody who really is I'm confident is a very loose, aggressive maniac, and I have history with them. I want, when I go for a double check raise, I want to check raise the flop and then check the turn, and then he thinks, oh, he was just full of crap on the flop and now he's giving up, so I'll do my loose aggressive thing and I'll bet and he'll fold. No, I'm going to check raise you again. However, in this spot here, when we're sort of still up in the air on what kind of player type this is, I am on board. I agree with Toby's decision to just lead out here. He makes it a good amount. It's about 3/4 pot. And villain 3 decides to call. So we go to the river. Now this is definitely the interesting part in the hand, because that's a pretty damn nasty river card there, if I didn't say so. That's one of the worst river cards you can get, because it brings in the backdoor diamond. Not only does it bring in the backdoor diamond draw, but it obviously creates a one-liner to a straight on the board, which really sucks when you got bottom set. So this is the one decision that Toby makes in the hand that I am going to definitely disagree with. He comes out for a bet size of about 2/3 pot here on the river. Now, I would much prefer to check here, and the reason why is because we're in one of those spots where it's basically just a way ahead, way behind situation. In a lot of cases here, it's one of those spots where he kind of, if he has any 10, he beats us, right? So I think when we bet out here, we're just kind of building the pot for all of those hands that beat us, or just allow him to fold. Now, will he call with a king, queen, or something? If he's a bad player, which most of them are at these stakes, sure, he probably will call with a king-queen here. However, he's not going to bluff here. He's not going to... There's not enough room for him to come over the top and bluff. And basically what we're doing here is we're just taking his bluffing range completely away from him. If we had checked, however, in this spot, we allow him to take a hand like ace-3 or whatever nonsense and go crazy with it. And we can choose to call or maybe even fold depending on our read on the player, but it keeps that bluffing range in there. It allows us, it just creates a lot more hands that we can still win against. Whereas when we just bet out here, we kind of just take away all of his options. And I don't like, when we're in a spot like this where it's a way ahead, way behind situation, I like to just allow villain to keep his bluffing range in the hand, because it just allows us, if we're going to go to showdown, I want to have more hands that I'm going to beat. So I would really just prefer to check in this spot for that reason. And if I was going to bet, I actually might prefer a smaller bet size, because this is the problem. When he does that, what on earth do we do? You guys can probably see it on the screen there. We're getting 8.63 to 1 pot odds. Now, this is kind of, I'm going to go on another little semi-rant about poker math here, because a lot of people will look at this. Toby actually pointed out in the email to me, I'm getting 8.63 to 1. The problem is, this is why sometimes math is useless in poker. Sometimes. Not all the time, just sometimes. This is a perfect situation where the math is useless. Yes, it's 8.63 to 1, but it could be 1,863 to 1. Villain 3 is never bluffing here. That's really the whole bottom line here, is that he's never bluffing. Because if he has a hand like King Queen, King Jack, even if he has pocket kings for top set here, he's not ever going to come over the top, because it doesn't make any sense. He's looking at the same board as we are, and he's just as afraid of that 10 or even the 2 diamonds, and he's just going to take a showdown. He's just going to call and take a showdown with his king queen or his pocket kings. He's not going to raise here. He is going to raise with a straight, though, right? That's the one hand he's going to raise with, or a flush, obviously. He's going to raise with a flush, obviously, as well. So that's why if we are going to make a bet on the river, as I said, I prefer a check. But if we're going to make a bet on the river, I would prefer to make it more like half pot or something, so at least, we don't have 80% of our stack, and we're looking at these insane pot odds. And then we have to talk ourselves into calling, because who could ever fold, of course, when you're getting 8.63 to 1. But the problem is, as you're going to see at the showdown here, he's never bluffing. He always has that, right? So I hope this hand was useful for you guys. I mean, I think the river especially there is, I think that a check is a better decision there. But if we are going to bet, I think that there's even more to consider here, and just what kind of bet sizing do we want to use. If we're going for value, what are we going for value against? We're trying to get value out of hands like King, Queen, King, Jack and stuff. Well, if we bet half pot, we're more likely to get value out of those hands. And also, it doesn't put us in this horrendous spot where we're using pot odds, when they're meaningless, because when he raises, he always has it. And yeah, I guess that's kind of my thoughts on this hand here. Look, it's one of those spots where you've got a donkey with his 10-8 who's just going to call anything. I mean, this is the lowest. These are the NL5. This is what you see all the time. And, most of the time he's not going to hit that queen or that 8. He's up against it. I mean, we're so far ahead. Pocket deuces on the flop in the turn, but once in a while he is going to hit it. And so the only question is, how do we lose the least? And I think that there was definitely a way to not get stacked in this hand. I think that just with some different decisions on the river, check, call, assuming he doesn't go all in on the river, or just a bet fold, even with like I said, a 50% bet on the river, because we know when he comes over the top, he's never bluffing, as we see here. So anyways, those are kind of my thoughts on the hand. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Perhaps you agree with what I'm talking about here. Maybe you think I'm totally crazy, and this is definitely got to get all the money in here. It's you gotta everything's good. So let me know either way. Make sure you guys give this video a like if you found it useful. Make sure you subscribe to my channel because I promise I am actually going to be putting out videos a lot more frequently, at least once a week. And lastly, make sure you check out my free ebook before. It's called Massive Profit at the Micros. It's a 50-page ebook, give you my entire strategy on how I crush these stakes. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. It's been Nathan Williams with BlackRain79.com.